Okay.
Okay. We are in Masechet Eruvin, Daf Lamed Aleph 31. We have three major topics corresponding with three Mishnayot. First, Kohen placing an Eruv in a cemetery. So the problem is that Kohen cannot really access it very easily. Why does the Mishnah permit a Kohen to put his Eruv Techumin in the cemetery? That's question one. Then we're talking about using holy food for an Eruv Techumin. This will mean anyone putting food that he cannot eat, is prohibited for eating, using as Eruv Techumin. And third, sending an Eruv Techumin through an incompetent agent to place it outside of the city limits on your behalf when that person does not have da'at, proper intention himself. Okay, so that's so everything's about Eruv Techumin, which again is about extending. It's kind of like a Wi-Fi extender because you want to go a little bit further out. Then you're allowed the 2,000 amot, and so as long as your meal is out there in 2,000 amot, that's your center, so you can move even beyond that. So it has to be placed there, and it has to be something edible. So we begin. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Af Bet HaKevarot. According to Rabbi Yehuda, an eruv can be placed in a cemetery, even by a kohen. The Rabbanan, the majority opinion, says no, this is not good. So let's analyze this machloket. Tana. A kohen is permitted, according to the Yehuda, because he does have a way that he can get to the cemetery by putting himself inside a big box. In general, a box that's big enough, tum'ah does not hold tum'ah. So if he's in a carriage, a crate, or a cupboard, and it's on wheels, or somehow he moves inside the box within the cemetery, that's fine. So therefore, since there is a way he can access it, he is permitted. Kasabad ohel zaruk shemeh ohel. So he must think that a tent that moves, zaruk, literally a thrown tent. So a tent that is movable is still called a tent in the sense that is actually protecting him from the tum'ah that's all around. This is actually a very important concept that has a lot of practical effects today. If a kohen wants to go in an airplane, an airplane often goes over cemeteries, right? At some point or another, is that permitted or not? If a moving tent is considered a tent, then that'll be fine. Or driving in a car within a cemetery, as long as you keep all the windows closed, then that would be fine. The problem is, right, how high does it reach? Okay, the problem is that halacha l'maaseh, we do not follow this opinion, that ohel zaruk shmeh ohel, we do not say a moving tent is considered, rather it's not considered a tent. So therefore, actually, airplanes can be a problem, and so there's different opinions about how to get around them, and everybody says a kohen can in fact fly. One is because it's made out of aluminum, which is not one of the general materials that's mikabel tumah. Another opinion is, as you said, it's way high, right? Even if it reaches the rakia, that has some point up to the clouds, but not above that, and so that would be okay also. But it could affect the F train. Goes over a cemetery. So all these have practical effects. Okay, but
inside a bag, inside the airplane.
Inside a bag inside the airplane, right? That's like a different reason. Picture. That's because there are dead bodies on the airplane, right? Probably most any flight you're on, certainly an El Al flight has bodies underneath. What they do there is they put some protection. They put a space above the body so that it will be contained. The tumah is contained inside it. But obviously there are different opinions about that. All right. So
just in case anyone watches this on YouTube, just to clarify that there's dead bodies on the El Al flight because they're going to the cemetery in Israel.
They are being buried in Israel. That's right. Okay. Yes. It could be someone dies on the flight, but I don't know. On ships that would happen all the time, and they had a different way of solving that problem. Okay. The Tana nichnas eres ha'amim b'shida teva u'migdal Rabbi metameh v'Rabbi Yosef v'Rabbi Yehuda metaher. And so this follows a machloket that we know already from a baraita. Someone who goes to the other nations, in other words, any area outside of Israel, has a law of tum'ah. This is a law midrabanan. This is actually a very old takana that the rabbis made already in the times of the second Bet HaMikdash, because in other countries, the non-Jews there do not always mark graves and cemeteries. So we're always afraid that there might be a body buried anywhere and not marked. And therefore, Kohanim are prohibited from leaving Israel because they can become tameh there. There's probably a secondary goal, which is that Kohanim should stay in Israel. And so they're using the laws of Tumah in order to keep them in Israel because they are holy. But this is a general rule. And so, however, if he does need to go out for some reason, a Kohen can go out in a box out to the other nations. So that's permitted. The bi mitameh, the bi oseh, the bi yudah mitaher. But this is machloket. The bi says no good. In other words, he thinks a moving tent is not considered a tent, is not protective. The bi oseh, the bi yudah says it is okay. Halacha follows the bi. So we can actually use this. But in this case, the bi yudah could be the same. Could be the opinion of the Rabbi Yosef, but Rabbi Yehuda. Oh, that would be his son. Okay, that makes sense. All right. B'may kami palgei mor sabar ohel zaruk lav shemei ohel. Mor sabar ohel zaruk shemei ohel. They're arguing this point whether a moving tent is considered a tent that protects or not. Ve'ha de Tanya Rabbi Yehuda omer marvin lechohen tahor. Now this can explain yet another baraita where the Yehuda says that a kohen can make an eruv when he is kohen and he's using terumah that is also tahor. So when the kohen is tahor, the food is tahor, and he puts it on a grave, and that's okay. So now we're going to analyze this baraita. Hechi azil, how's he going to get there? But we answered that already. B'shida teva migdal. Okay, fine. But there's another problem. When I take this loaf of bread that's terumah, and I put it terumah tehorah, when someone puts it on the grave, it's going to become tameh. And so then the kohen won't be able to eat it anymore. How are we going to solve that? Either, I'll say it's fruit. Fruit, in order to receive tumah, fruit has to first become wet with one of 7 liquids: dew, wine, oil, blood, honey, or milk. But if it never got wet or got wet with something else, then it cannot receive tum'ah. And therefore, even if it's on top of a grave, it would still be okay. Or it's mizonot bread. If it was made with fruit juice is also not one of those 7, and so that bread would not mekabel tum'ah. Okay, so that would be okay also. Since we just talked about airplanes and mizonot bread, I have to tell you the story of Rav Aaron Lichtenstein, my Rosh Yeshiva. David, you probably know the story. He's on El Al, and right the stewardess serves him the meal and says, and he says, "Is there a place to wash?" And she says, "No, it's okay. It's mizonot bread." And he says, "No, but I want to wash." She says, "All right, but when you get home, ask your rabbi." Okay, that's the funny story. So now the next question: how can he get it? Right? I mean, he's inside the box and the food's outside. He's going to have to stick his hand out, and he's going to become tamer when he does that. The answer is he can use like chopsticks or something. He could use a wooden board, and he sticks the wooden board out and grabs the loaf and brings it back. Hold on, that's not good enough. A wooden board is not mekabel tumah because only a utensil is mekabel tumah, and wood has to be shaped as a bowl, something that can hold water, not if it's a flat board. However, it can still contract tum'ah by ohel. If it's a board that then you are covering over the grave, then anything under it will make an ohel. This is the opposite ohel, not ohel that protects, but ohel that transfers tum'ah. So what are you going to do with that? The answer is the maitila ahore. Oh, he's using the edge of it. In other words, a thin board upright so that it never has a tefach wide to create an ohel. So this is how he can put a kohen who's tahor can have terumah that's tahor and put it on a grave as an eruv if he does all these things. All right, so now we answered a difficult problem, and we answered it so well, we're wondering how come Rabbanan, how come on the other side say it's a problem, right? After all, this is a straightforward solution, right? Yachi, my tamad Rabbanan, kasabre asur liknot bait beisure hanaa. The Rabbanan say this is prohibited to put an eruv on a grave for a different reason altogether, not because the Kohen can't get there. He could figure out a way to get there, but rather because when you make an eruv in a place, you're acquiring that area. You're making that your home, and you want the food to be there for tomorrow, and you want to be safe, and you're getting benefit from it, and you're not allowed to derive benefit from a grave. If you go to the cemetery, you don't go lean on the grave or sit on it, put your coffee on top of it, right? This is sacred. It's not respectful to do that, and so therefore that's the reason why you can't make an eruv, because then you're deriving personal benefit from the grave. All right, well, that seems to be a good reason. So now let's turn the tables around. Mikelata de biuda sabad mutar. Sabad biuda, why do you think that you can put your food on a grave? Aren't you worried about that same problem? Kasabal misvot lav lehanot nitnu. Very interesting answer. We have a general rule that Rava says that mitzvot are not made for personal benefit. We have examples of that on Hanukkah, right? The Hanukkah candles are there for mitzvah. And we say, right, and lanu reshut ishtamesh bahem. We cannot derive benefit. Something that's set aside for mitzvah, it's special, it's holy, and we should not derive benefit. Another example are the sukkah and the decorations in the sukkah. If you decorate the sukkah with fruit, right, you got to leave it there. It's for a mitzvah, and so you shouldn't derive personal. Mitzvot are things that we are doing for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and not something that we're doing for our own good. This is the Kohen. Right, it could be anything. Even, let's say, even a regular person, anyone. If I want to put I'm not a Kohen. If I want to put it there, right, still deriving benefit from the grave, and so that is a problem. It's interesting because generally this rule, mitzvot lav lehanot nitnu, is a chumrah. It says I cannot do anything to derive benefit from it. In this case, however, the Biuda is using it for a kula. Since making an eruv is a mitzvah, and you only make an eruv, we're going to see that in a second, when you want to, just leave for now. Okay, making an eruv is a mitzvah. And so therefore, since mitzvot are not for personal benefit, when I take my bread and put it on the grave, so I am not deriving benefit from it because it's a mitzvah. So he's actually using this principle in order to permit, I can put it on the grave. It's mitzvah benefit, not my benefit.
So he would say that the Nerot Shabbat are also not for your personal benefit? Your benefit.
No, Shabbat is different.
Why? This is Shabbat too.
Oh, Nerot Shabbat is different. Nerot Shabbat, the rabbis made so that you can benefit from them, so that you'll have a nice meal with your family.
I feel like this is what they made the Eruv for too, so that you can benefit from it.
Okay, well, we'll see. I mean, according to one opinion we're about to see, you can only make an Eruv for the sake of a mitzvah. If I want to go 4,000 amot because I want to go study with the rabbi there, because I want to go visit my grandmother or a sick person or pray there, right? So it's even that is not just because I want to eat or there because it's a nice view, but only because I'm doing another mitzvah through that. Okay, so that's the Biuda's answer. Mitzvot lav lehanot nitnu. All right, now we're going to try to figure out what about Rabbanan, right? Don't they also agree with that principle? Ela hadamar Rava mitzvot lav lehanot nitnu lema ketanae amara lishmaate. This principle that Rava says, and we apply it in lots of places. Are you telling me now that it's a subject to a machloket tanaim that the Biuda does think it applies, and the Rabbanan don't think it applies, and they think you can get personal benefit from mitzvot? I mean, this is, we don't want to, we'd rather not say this because this is, we want it to be a universal principle. So Rava could answer you, Malach Rava, is sevira lehu de en me'arvin ela diva mitzvah, de kula alma mitzvot lav lehanot nidnu. He says, you're right. If you start with the assumption that you can only make an eruv for the goal of a mitzvah, to go and study Torah, to visit a sick person that's far away, then you would be right that everyone has to agree that mitzvot are not given, not lav lehanot nitnu, and then you'd be stuck in a corner. But this is the very subject of the machloket. He can say, so the Biuda says that we only make an eruv for mitzvah, and mitzvot are not for personal benefit, and therefore you can use the grave because it was never going to be for your benefit. However, the rabbis think that you can make an eruv for any reason that you want. I just feel like going for a walk that way. And so therefore, the eruv is not going to be a mitzvah necessarily, and so therefore I can derive benefit. I'm going to walk there, I'm going to eat it, and therefore he cannot put it on the grave. And so therefore we can see that we can establish that everyone agrees with the principle, and yet they have a machloket. Ela hada amar Rav Yosef, en ma'arvin ela lidvar mitzvah, lema ketanei amarah lishma'ateh. Okay, that helped Rava, but now we have a problem for Rav Yosef. He's the one that said, you only make an eruv to visit your grandmother, to go to a minyan that's far away. You should only do it for mitzvah. Now you're going to tell me that which we apply, a lot of cases, you're going to tell me that is subject to a machloket tanaim. Amalach Rav Yosef, lekula alma en me'arvin ela lidvar mitzvah. All Tanaim agree with both of these principles. And so they're arguing on something else. The rabbis say, the Biudah says, once he puts the eruv there on Friday afternoon at sunset, so the eruv applies, and therefore he can walk. Even if a bird comes or someone comes and eats the bread, he can still walk that far as long as the food was there. And so the Biudah says he doesn't care about the food being there all over Shabbat, and therefore he doesn't acquire that place. He doesn't make it a home on Shabbat itself, and he doesn't need it to be watched over. And therefore, he's not really using the grave for any personal benefit at all. However, the rabbis think that when a person puts it there before Shabbat, he has in mind that he does want it to be safeguarded there, and he does want that space to be his, and therefore he is benefiting from the space, from the grave on Shabbat, and that's why, according to the Rabbanan, it is prohibited. Okay, that ends topic number one. And now, second topic is using various kinds of prohibited food, holy food, for an eruv techomin. So Mishnah has a parallelism, all the things that are permitted in this paragraph and not permitted in this paragraph. Let's read the parallelism together. Me'arvin b'demai. You can make an eruv with demai. Demai is food that I bought from an am ha'aretz. And we assume maybe the am ha'aretz, the farmer, took teruma and maaser, but maybe he didn't. Most people do, not everybody does. So midoraita, that's okay. But the rabbis came and said, you better take it again. So since you're not sure, and so maybe you could eat it. In some cases, you could eat it, as we'll see. You can make an eruv with demai. But you cannot do the parallel, avalo betebel. But tebel is raw produce that you just harvested, and you did not take to the mal maaser. So for sure, midoraita, you cannot eat that. And since you have to be able to eat your eruv, therefore you cannot use that food. Okay, b'maaser rishon shenitela terumato. Now, maaser rishon, that's the tenth that you give to the Levi, that you already took the teruma. So generally you take the teruma, give it to the Kohen, and then you take maaser and give it to the Levi. So that's good. So you did everything properly. So the rest of the food you can eat. So you can use that for an eruv. However, however, if the teruma was not taken, then that's no good. Okay, so all this seems obvious. We're going to discuss each case. So on the first, second, fourth, and fifth year of a Shemitah cycle, you take a tenth of your produce and you have to bring it to Jerusalem. However, if you live too far, then you can redeem it for money, and then you can eat the rest of the food. So if you redeemed it, you can eat that food, so you can use it for the eruv. Whereas if you have something that's maaser sheni or hekdesh, I say something, this belongs to the Bet HaMikdash, and therefore I can't eat it. If I redeemed it, it's okay. Then I can. If I did not redeem it, then it's prohibited food and I cannot use it. Okay, so each thing has a parallel. Yet there's one thing that does not have a parallel. HaKohanim bechala, and Kohanim, the chala belongs to them. They can eat the chala. So obviously a Kohen can use the chala, the portion that you take out of dough, for an eruv. No one else, a non-Kohen, cannot use it. Okay, that's the Mishnah. And now we're going to go through each item. Demai, ha la chazele. Hold on, demai, you're not allowed to eat. It's true, it's only midrabanan, but still you're not allowed to eat it because maybe the farmer did not take Terumah Maaser. Answer, Migodi ba'e mafkar lehu lenichse, v'haveh ani, v'chazu le, ashtanameh, chazi le. Since there's a law that titnan machlin ta'aniyim demai, v'achsanya demai. There's a law that you are allowed to give demai food to poor people or to soldiers who come and board with you. And so, therefore, it is possible. In other words, the rabbis are the ones that said be strict and take Terumah Maaser. But for a poor person, they dispensed with that gezerah. So a person theoretically could renounce ownership over all of his property, make himself poor, and then he could eat it. So since he could do that, he does theoretically have access to eating the demai, and therefore one is permitted to use demai to make an eruv. Amar Rav Huna, Tana bet Shammai omerim en machlin taniyim demai, bet Hillel omerim machelin et taniyim demai. This is subject to machloket, and we follow Bet Hillel, who says you can do this. According to Bet Shammai, this would in fact be a problem, and perhaps he would not allow a person to use demai for an eruv. Okay, next item, Maaser Rishon shenitela peshita. If you didn't take terumah, then of course you can't eat it, and therefore of course you can't use it. So this is that you did take it. If you took terumah, of course it's fine. What would be the problem? La siricha shektimo bashibolin v'nitela mimenu terumat maaser v'lo nitela mimenu terumah gedola. Here's what happened. In general, the proper way to do things is that the farmer reaps the grain. He takes the wheat and he winnows it, threshes and winnows. He separates the grain from the kernels, and he takes the kernels and puts them in the storehouse. Once they're in the storehouse, now they are chayav in terumah maaser. Let's say he has 100 bushels. So terumah is generally 2%. That goes to the Kohen. That'll be 2 bushels go to the Kohen, and the rest is 98. He takes 10% of that, in other words, 9.8 bushels, and gives it to a Levi. Right? That's the proper way to do things, and if he does that, that's fantastic, and the rest of it he could eat. However, sometimes there are Leviim who are a little extra zealous, a tiny bit extra greedy, and so what they do is they come to the threshing floor before, right? They come right to the field. And before it's separated into grain, and they take their 10th before the Kohen gets his 2%. Now the Levi benefits by that because now he gets 10 bushels. He's got to do a little extra work. I don't know if it's worth it. But so he gets 10 bushels, and then he takes it home. He gives his terumat maaser because the Levi also has to give part of that his terumah of his maaser to the Kohen. However, in that case, terumah does not need to be taken because the law is first you give terumah and then maaser. If the Levi were preempted and took maaser first, then nobody has to give terumah anymore. Not the farmer and not the Levi either. So in that case, this is what it's coming to teach us, this Mishnah, right? Because I mean the pshat of the Mishnah, maybe just giving us simple cases, but the rabbis want to learn something, omni-significance from it. And so therefore it's talking about this case where terumah, even if the terumah was not taken, it's still permitted. Min hamaaser. So you have to take from it the terumah of Hashem, and that's a 10th of the 10th. In other words, the Levi has to give a 10th of the 10th to the Kohen. So that means that teaches us that the Levi only has to give a 10th of the 10th, and the Levi does not have to. That's called terumat maaser. The Levi does not have to give both terumah gedolah and terumat maaser, even if he went and gave and took it before the Kohen. And so it's coming to teach us, I might have thought in this case it would be prohibited. No, even in this case, it's okay. Okay, good. The Papa asks a question, hold on, if that's true, then it should apply even in another case when he takes it from the storehouse. In other words, after he separated the kernels and he put the kernels in the storehouse, and that was already chayav into the Gedolah. And in that case, the Levi went fast and took his piece. I guess he didn't want to do the extra work. So would you say also in that case that when he takes the 10th first and nobody gave the terumah, that would be okay? Abaye says no. Amale alecha amar kera mikol maserotechem tarimu et terumat Hashem. Mikol maserotechem is inclusive word, and so this comes to say to include that he does have to give terumah in that case. Umada ita. Now why'd you decide this in this case he doesn't have to, in this case he does? Hai idgan, ha la idgan. Because in this one it's called grain, and the other one it's not called grain. And if you look at the Pesukim, it'll be a little bit clearer. The first pasuk that we mentioned is this one. So that for the Levi only has to give one terumah to the Kohen. And then this pasuk mentions dagan, min hagoren, right? So here's where we're referring to has to be grain. And here's the second pasuk that we learn, mikol maserotechem. So that's coming to include that case where it's already in the storehouse, that even if the Levi comes earlier, you still have to give the first terumah to the Kohen. Okay, so that resolves that situation. Maaseh sheni shebekdesh sheniftu. Okay, maaseh sheni, food that I'm supposed to bring to the Bet Hamikdash, but I redeem it for money or something I make holy, and I say I'm going to, donate my backyard, and so I instead give money. I redeem it for money, and then whatever is grown there or that maaseh sheni I can eat. Peshita, obviously, then that's something I'm allowed to eat. Oh, there's another law. When I redeem, if I have $100 worth of grapes and I live in Haifa, I don't want to carry them, I redeem them, I have to redeem it for $125. And so I have to add a fine for the redemption. What if I didn't? I only did $100. That I still owe the 25, but the redemption does take effect, and I can't eat those grapes. And so that's coming to include, even in that case where I didn't pay the fine yet, I'm still allowed to eat it and use it for an eruv. Good. Avalo bat tevel. I cannot use tevel. Peshita, obviously, food that you didn't take to the mama said, you're not allowed to eat. Obviously, you can't use it for an eruv. Lasricha betevel tabul midrabanan kegon shezerao be'asi she'eno nakuv. It could be talking about a case where midoraita I don't have to give to the mama said, but the rabbis say I do. For example, if I grow something in a pot, so it's not connected to the ground, and therefore midoraita I don't have to give to the maaseh, but the rabbis say it's similar enough, and the rabbis require it. So in that case, since although it's molim midrabanan, I cannot eat it, therefore I cannot use it for an eruv. Right, the tent that goes to the Levi, from which terumah was not taken, I cannot use. Peshita, of course not. Why do I say Oh, so now we're going to use that, draw from the case that we had above. Isn't this obvious? No, it could be talking about a case where the Levi came after the grain was separated in the storehouse, and he took his 10th first, and he gave his terumah, but he didn't take but no one gave the terumah gedolah. I might have thought what Papa's question was, that would be allowed, but this is similar to when it's taken at the field, out in the field, and therefore this comes to teach us that no, that is not allowed. Okay, and if I didn't redeem my produce, and obviously it's holy, it's talking about even a case where I did redeem it, but not properly. Usually I have to redeem it with money, with actual minted money, stamped money. But if I redeem it with just a form, a coin that has no stamp on it, which might be worth something, but that's not officially money, that's not okay. Surah. So you have to use a form, money that has a form on it, we learn from Pasuk. And so also, Hekdesh, Shechidelo Agav Karka, the Rachamana Amar, Venatan HaKesef, Vecham Lo. if I obligate myself to give the value of a field, then when I redeem it, it has to be right. So what if I did not redeem it for money, but rather for different land? And that is not okay because it has to be done with money. As the pasuk says, "V'natana kesef ekam lo," there's a problem because this pasuk does not exist. There's no pasuk that says "V'natana kesef ekam lo." Rather, as Tosafot says, it's referring to this pasuk. B'migaol yigal et hasadeh makdishoto v'yasaf chamishit kesef erkecha alav v'kam lo. So it has kesef and it has v'kam lo. The Gemara doesn't have a different version of it. Rather, the Gemara is just paraphrasing the pasuk and not quoting it word for word. But that is what it means. All right, good. So now we completed the second of the topics, and the last topic is sending an eruv. If I don't want to go there myself, I don't have to. I can send it through an agent, right? So I can ask my friend, "Hey, take this. Would you mind on Friday out there and place it there for me?" And you have to have intent when one places an eruv techumin that say, if I take it, I have to say, this is I am now hereby able to walk 2,000 amot from here. If I give it to my friend to do that, he has to say that on my behalf or have that intent on my, actually has to verbalize it. Okay, so Hasholech et eruvo biyad haresh shoteh v'katan. If I send it with someone who does not have full competence, and therefore they cannot have that intent, it's a problem. Or biyad mi she'eno modeh ba'eruv, eno eruv, or someone who does not follow the rabbinic law, like a Samaritan, kuti, who doesn't agree with the whole concept of eruv, so he might be competent, but he's not going to agree with this thing because he doesn't think it's true. So therefore, that is not an eruv. But if I send it just as a messenger to take it to the spot, hey, take it to this other person, and so the child or the Samaritan is just a FedEx and gives it to my friend who is an adult Jew over there, and my adult Jew friend puts it there, competent person, then that's okay, right? So he can be a messenger for transportation, but not a messenger for actually placing it. Okay, that's the Mishnah. Gemara asks, "V'katan lo, v'amarav huna katan gove et ha'eruv." Hold on, what you said, a child can't do it? Rav Huna said in a different context that a katan, this is for eruv chatzerot. If I have to go for eruv chatzerot for courtyards, you need everybody to contribute a little bit to it. So I can ask my child, "Hey, go around to all the courtyards and take a little bit of food from each person," and then he puts it in one place, and that would be okay. So how come over here it's not okay? Because there's a major difference. In eruv techumin, I have to place it with intention. This is going to be my place, and I can go further. I have to say it. Whereas eruv chatzerot, it works automatically. Just the fact that we all put food in one place, that automatically creates the partnership. And no one has to say anything or have any special intention, and therefore a robot could do it, and that's why a child can do it in that case. All right, that's good conceptually to distinguish between these two different kinds of eruv. Okay, who does not agree with an eruv? The Samaritans. They had a major community. Now there's only like 1,000 Samaritans left in the world, but back in the rabbinic times, there were tens of thousands at least. So there was a major population, and the rabbis talk about them often. Okay, if I got someone to receive it from him on the other end, that's okay. Hold on, maybe I should worry that the child or the Samaritan will not give it to him over there when he gets to the other side. Rab Chisda said in another context, which we'll see in a second, when I'm standing there and watching, I don't want to go there, but I can see that far, and I can see that he gets. So I verified, right? Trust, but also verify. Hold on, maybe my friend, the competent adult who's over there, maybe he won't receive it, and maybe he won't actually do what I asked him to do. Rabbi Yechiel said this in another context, we'll see in a second, that we can assume that a messenger does what he said. I don't have to verify. If I told him to do it, I can trust that he did it, and then I can use it. All right, so that we resolve that problem, and now we just want to find the original context for this. What was the original context where they said these principles? If I give my eruv to an elephant and he brought it there, and put it there, or if he gave it to a monkey and he put it in the location for me, that's not good, right? Elephant and a monkey cannot have proper da'at. If I put it on the elephant and I send the elephant and I tell my friend, listen, there's an elephant coming your way, right? Can you take the loaf of bread off of it and place it for me as an eruv? Then that would be okay. Now, in this case, we really do have to worry. If the elephant will get distracted, it'll go a different way, he's not going to get there. On this, Rav Chisda said, I'm watching to make sure that the elephant or the monkey actually does what he wants. See, in this context, it makes a lot more sense. It didn't make so much sense when we're talking about a person where you can be more sure that he's going to give it to the intended recipient. Hold on, maybe my friend who is going to place it will not do it. So that's what he was talking about, that we trust that a shaliach will always fulfill his obligation. And tomorrow we're going to talk about this general principle, that a chazakah, general assumption. Can we rely on messengers to fulfill their agency or not? This has a widespread effect on halakha because there are many, many things that we rely on doing through an agency, but we'll leave that for tomorrow. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen. Thank you, everybody.